Order members, the sitting is resumed and we will commence with questions to the Minister of Employment and Learning, and we will start with listed questions. Questions number 7 and 9 have been withdrawn, and I call Ms Claire Sugden.
Question number 1.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank the member for the question. The proposal to establish a veterinary school at the Coleraine campus of the University of Ulster has been brought forward by the University. The University has the discretion to offer veterinary courses from within its existing MASN allocation and funding. However, as the University wishes to secure funding from my department for its veterinary school, it is preparing an economic appraisal to support its proposal. This proposal may be used to bid for additional funding by my department.
I call Ms Claire Sugden.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. And indeed, I encourage him to welcome the proposal when he does receive it. Northern Ireland does need a veterinary school, and Coleraine is indeed the best place forward. In line with his announcement today on apprenticeships, how does he envisage his department working with local veterinary practices to supplement a higher education veterinary course when it should come?
Thank the member for the supplementary. Just by way of responding to some of the preliminary comments, we will give proper objective analysis of the economic appraisal whenever it does come forward. Indeed, the issue about whether Northern Ireland needs a veterinary school or otherwise will be one of the issues that we will wish to take into consideration. And again, we have to weigh the expenditure on this against other objectives that we may have in terms of other skill requirements within our economy. And in terms of the comments she makes around other aspects of this, I do understand that South West College, it's featured quite a lot today so far, has been exploring some opportunities in relation to some supporting issues around animal welfare, and I'm more than happy to ask the Director, Malachy McAleer, to get in touch with the member just to elaborate further in terms of some of those initiatives that are being undertaken in that regard.
I call Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his indication that he may see a need for a veterinary school in Northern Ireland, because I think it's been well established, even from presentations to the Employment and Learning Committee, that all parties were supportive of that. The Minister refers to the economic, I suppose, support from his department. Would he also consider there's a possibility of economic support from also enterprise, trade and investment and agriculture and rural development because of the subject matter that is veterinary science?
Again, I thank the member for the question. I think, again, by way of context, it's worth stressing that an investment in terms of a veterinary school is actually very expensive. The university themselves are talking of a school for about 250 students, and that's 50 across 5 years. So we are talking around about a total cost of about $78,000 to train a vet, and that's probably more expensive than any other profession that you can think of. So it's important that members are conscious of that. The university, as things stand, can go ahead with this from within its existing resources, but that does mean a distortion. So their preferred option is for the department to make a bid for additional resources. Now, whether that's a bid from my department or whether it's something we do in conjunction with DETI and DARD is something we can consider, but it still has to be determined.
I call John Dallett.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I've listened carefully to the Minister's response, and I'm sure the Minister is familiar with the old adage, eat horse and you will get grass. Can the Minister assure us that Coleraine is not being fed on another empty promise and there's no money?
Well, first of all, can I give the House assurance that I have no intention of either eating horse or grass? And obviously, the Coleraine campus is a major aspect of the University of Ulster. Indeed, we've made some capital investments in that university in very recent times. So there's an ongoing support there to ensure that there are modern facilities. It is, of course, for the university themselves to allocate courses around their various campuses. All I can say is to reiterate that I will give this a proper objective analysis, but at this stage I can't give any commitments on what would be the way forward.
I call Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and my apologies for being a few moments late. The Minister is looking at the issue. Can he also establish whether the University of Ulster at their various campuses would be looking at various specialist schools that they could develop, hopefully a veterinary school at Coleraine and other campuses able to develop, so that there is a holistic approach in a number of disciplines?
Well, we're very happy to encourage the university to go down that particular line, and especially at postgraduate level, that type of intervention where different types of institutes are set up, and also where you corral people across a range of disciplinary boundaries, is a very important intervention that universities can make. Again, the universities have their own academic freedom. It is for them to make these calls. We do facilitate the broad direction of travel through our higher education strategy, which does place the economy at its core. And no doubt the Vice-Chancellor and indeed his successor will wish to reflect upon the comments and encouragement the members made.
Moving on, I call Paul Given.
Question number 2, Deputy Speaker.
The Executive has not taken any decisions regarding reductions in departmental budgets in respect of delays in implementing welfare reform. I am aware that the Treasury is imposing penalties for the delays in implementing welfare reform locally. The Finance Minister has advised departments to plan for resource baseline reductions in 2014-15 and has advised departments that there may also be baseline reductions to cover welfare reform and other executive pressures in 2015-16.
I call Paul Given.
Thank the Minister for that response. Is the Minister able to outline to the House what the real impact of any reduction to his department would be for those vulnerable people who are in receipt of different benefits and support to get them into training opportunities and into employment? And those are the people that we're trying to help, those vulnerable people. And will there be implications then if your budget is reduced as a result of not bringing forward the welfare reform?
Well, I concur with the broad thrust of what the member is saying, and let me frame the answer in this way. There are a range of different means by which we can help people who find themselves in poverty or lacking opportunities to progress in society. It's important that we have a balance of interventions across the board. If we end up in a situation where we are essentially paying fines to Westminster for not implementing welfare reform, something that it's a decision out of our hands, but we, under parity, have little choice but to go along with, then there are very real implications for our ability to invest in those levers to help people to get out of poverty. Beyond my own department, we can look at things like investing in public health, which is important to improving people's life chances. We can talk about investing in early years education, which is also important to investing in people's life chances. And from my own departmental perspective, investing in training programmes and employment schemes. Unless we actually can invest in the skills, the employability skills, the technical skills that enable people to engage with the labour market, then we actually are condemning people to a situation where they will be in receipt of benefits. Too much of the current discussion is around simply the issue about the protection of benefits, worthy as that is. We have to have a much more rounded discussion and understand that we have a range of different mechanisms that are involved in supporting vulnerable people. And if we are forced into a situation where we have to make cutbacks to those, then we're actually inadvertently condemning people to a life of poverty and taking away the ladder that will actually allow them to escape from that.
I call Pat Ramsey.
Speaker, following on from Mr Given, could the Minister outline to the House the departmental reduction as a result of the budget bill and the effect it will have on him delivering the service that he has?
Well, there's not actually a reduction as such in the budget bill as is currently working its way through the House. The budget bill is giving effect to the budget that was essentially agreed by the Executive and Assembly for the entirety of the CSR period. But we all know that we're going through a discussion that in some ways a little bit arbitrary and false, because we know this issue is still looming. The issue is whether there will be cuts made in year as part of the June monitoring round. That's where the discussions lie. It would be inappropriate for me to talk about the precise percentages and figures, given that those are matters that are privy within the Executive at this stage, and once those are agreed, no doubt the Finance Minister will make them known. But I think it's fair to say that across a whole range of departments that some very difficult decisions will have to be taken on the back of the implications of the failure of the Executive and indeed the failure of the Assembly to find a common agreement on the way forward on welfare reform.
I call Leslie Cree.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm sorry I didn't catch the Minister's response to the first question, but could you clarify perhaps that are any of his recent statements or programmes predicated upon the fact that welfare reform will be introduced?
Well, My department is not a welfare department. That's the responsibility of the Department of Social Development. Obviously, what happens in terms of welfare reform does influence the wider context in which policy is made in Northern Ireland. We, for example, are progressing our new employment programme, Steps to Success, and we hope to make announcements in that regard in the very near future. That's something that we would have been addressing irrespective of welfare reform, because it is a refreshment of our existing employment programme. But obviously we will want to take into account the onset of universal credit and other aspects of welfare reform in terms of how that will be implemented. Similarly, we have an emerging strategy at the executive level around economic inactivity. That has its genesis outside of welfare reform, because we understand that this is a deep structural problem within our economy that does need to be addressed. Indeed, we are the only part of the UK that's actually adopting an innovative approach to seeking to address that. But obviously, again, the crossover with welfare reform will have an influence in terms of how we design the detail on that strategy and the way forward.
Moving on, I call Jonathan Craig.
Question number 3, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Apprentices are employed through the current Apprenticeships NI programme. My department supports the cost of the off-the-job training required for achievement of qualifications set out in apprenticeship frameworks. Off-the-job training is delivered by further education colleges and other contracted training providers. In addition to training, an employer also receives a payment when the apprentice successfully completes the Apprenticeship NI programme. The incentive ranges from £250 to £1,500, depending on the complexity and level of apprenticeship undertaken. In January 2014, my department published its interim report on the review of apprenticeships, and today we published the fresh Northern Irish strategy on apprenticeships. One of the proposals is the introduction of a central service to promote and support apprenticeship provision for employers and participants, which will advertise centrally apprenticeship vacancies and provide a matching service between employers and prospective apprentices. The central service will also signpost employers to approved providers of off-the-job training, including further education colleges. The central service will also provide advice and guidance for employers and potential apprentices on the range of support and training available.
I call Jonathan Craig for supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his complete announcement to the House on the back of this question today. But I'll also declare an interest in this, as my own son is one of 4 apprentices appointed to BT this year. With regard to apprenticeships, would the Minister agree with the concept of apprenticeships being a way for even government departments to ensure that they have certain expertise within it and have a minimum period of employment, such as is used by the armed forces? Because in some fields, like IT, government departments have great difficulty competing with the private sector.
Again, I thank the member for his comments, and indeed it was his question today that led us to ensure that we delivered the strategy this morning. And obviously we wish your son every success in terms of his apprenticeship with BT, which is an excellent company with a great presence in Northern Ireland. In terms of the public sector, we already have a pilot private-public ICT apprenticeship at level 3, and that's in part working through NI Direct. So that is of benefit and working very, very successfully. One of the policy commitments in the new strategy is to engage with the public sector around public sector apprenticeships. I've written to my ministerial colleagues earlier on this year and received a large number of favourable responses. We are doing some detailed work with different departments in relation to that. So there's definitely scope for some pilots in terms of professional technical aspects of the public sector in Northern Ireland. And indeed, we hope to be making some announcements in this regard in the very near future.
I call Fra McCann.
Thank you, Minister, for his statement tonight. But in light of the statement of the House this morning on the apprenticeships, could the Minister say if further education colleges can play an important role in the creation of and promotion of apprenticeships within their own field?
Well, we view the further education sector as being a key delivery partner with respect to apprenticeships. We also have a number of private sector training providers as well that engage. But in particular, as we look to move the apprenticeship model up the skills ladder and offer a greater number of higher level apprenticeships, then the role of the further education colleges becomes even more critical. We also have the situation where the further education will offer a very logical progression route for people who are on apprentices, including higher level apprenticeships. And in particular, I would highlight the opportunity of foundation degrees. And again, higher education and further education has been a theme that a number of members have wished to stress over the past while, and that's something that we are seeking to build upon. We're also developing a further education strategy. FE Men's Business goes back to 2004. So it does need to be refreshed. So the new policy context in terms of both apprenticeships and a revised offer in terms of youth training will be two key drivers that will shape the future provision of further education. I know all of the principals of the 6 colleges are very enthusiastic about the way forward in terms of apprenticeships and are very keen to become involved and indeed to build upon their existing involvement.
I call Mike Nesbitt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In his announcement this morning, the Minister talked of apprenticeships at levels 7 and 8, which would be the equivalent of master's and doctorate level. Can I ask the Minister what uptake he anticipates at those levels and what resource and strategy he will be deploying to secure the uptake?
Well, today we're launching the high-level policy framework for apprenticeships, and we're making a major switch from a situation where apprenticeships are primarily offered at level 2 and level 3, with the dominance being at level 2. We have a fresh youth training offer which will address the level 2 issue to be published for consultation in the autumn, and our new model of apprenticeships will run from levels 3 to level 8. This is very much in the hands of the sectoral partnerships to develop new apprenticeship frameworks. So we're in the hands of the business community and employers and other organisations to develop the new apprenticeship frameworks. We have set out the guidelines and frameworks in which we will support the decisions of those partnerships. Already we are piloting apprenticeships at level 4, and indeed we're set to pilot apprenticeships at level 5, so good progress has been made in that regard. It is possible, and we've seen in other parts of the world apprenticeships being delivered for the equivalent of higher level skills at level 7 and 8, and we want to make sure that Northern Ireland is part of that, but it's very much in the hands of the business community to come forward with those relevant proposals, and my department will be more than happy to facilitate them in that regard.
Moving on, I call Jim Wells.
Question number 4, Mr Deputy Speaker.
BAE Aerospace has been an important contributor to the local economy in Kilkeel since operations commenced there in 1993. It currently employs 800 people in that location. Its business is the manufacture of aircraft cabin interiors, particularly seating, in which the company is an acknowledged world leader. Whilst BAE Aerospace has not sought any assistance from my department, any request for help or advice on skills development or recruitment issues will be welcome. My department has much to offer businesses through its wide range of programmes, for example on management and leadership, apprenticeships and bridge to employment on recruitment. Many of these include attractive financial support. Advisors from the Department's Skills Solutions Service would be happy to meet with BAE Aerospace to provide further information if that would be helpful.
I call Jim Wells.
Would the Minister be aware that 40% of all the aircraft seats made in the world by value are made in Kilkeel? And as he jets off in his first-class travels throughout the world, he undoubtedly will be sitting in one of those seats. But is he also aware that there's a certain degree of doubt about the future of the aircraft factory in Kilkeel, that the company have indicated that the company is going to be split in two, into a service division and a manufacturing division?
And
will he join with the Deputy Minister to do all that's possible to retain that employment within Kilkeel?
Well, can I first of all say, in terms of not only saying that that we are a world leader in terms of the provision of aircraft seating, just to go off topic slightly and say actually that the Northern Ireland cows are probably the most prized cows in terms of providing the leather for those seats. given that I actually had the pleasure of visiting with one of the main suppliers of the leather in Scotland recently, and they were commenting on the fact that our local cows in Northern Ireland, because we don't have the same degree of barbed wire as they have in Scotland, provides a far better, superior quality of product in terms of cow skin to make the seats. So we're world leading in more than one way in this regard. But I'm more than happy to give an assurance. I understand the concerns that the member has raised around this. Clearly, BAE Aerospace are not just a major employer in Kilkeel, but they're also a major employer in Northern Ireland. It's something we do wish to retain here. I appreciate people's unease about the announcements that have been made, and I'm more than happy to work in conjunction with the Deputy Minister to ensure that we can keep this in Northern Ireland, and in particular on the skills piece, we're more than happy to contribute on that side of the equation.
I call Phil Flanagan to ask the question about BAE Aerospace in Kilkeel.
Last Corlia, and I thank the Minister for his answer. The Minister will be aware that major engineering companies like BAE Aerospace offer day opportunities for students across the north to come and sample what it's like to work in such an environment. So can the Minister tell the House how his department supports such initiatives involving schools, colleges and major employers like BAE Aerospace?
Well, obviously, the issue of engagement between companies and schools and colleges is something that cuts across both my department and the Department of Education. It's something where there are examples of very good practice already. Unfortunately, those are few and far between. The member will be aware that we have launched a joint review of careers policy between my department and the Department of Education, and indeed the issue of placements, how we can encourage more engagement between schools and colleges and businesses so people can understand the opportunities that are out there for them. And also, the more we can encourage careers teachers and careers advisors to spend time in the industry as well to fully understand the opportunities that are out there, are all key things that we wish to build upon and develop further.
I call Colm Eastwood.
Question number 5.
Members will be aware of additional capital funding available to the Executive from the UK Government under the Economic Pact to support specific shared housing and education projects. The McGee teaching block bid was one of those put forward by my department and subsequently submitted by the Department of Finance and Personnel to HM Treasury for consideration under this initiative. The McGee project was not agreed by HM Treasury for inclusion in the package of shared education and housing projects. The Treasury felt that it did not meet the criteria of being a shared education project.
I call Colm Eastwood.
Disappointing to hear, Mr Deputy Speaker, that another piece of infrastructure for Derry has been turned down by whoever has turned it down. Can the Minister recommit to what was a commitment within the One Plan that the First and Deputy First Minister came to launch in the city of Derry, recommit to the 9,400 students for McGee by 2020, given the fact there's an ongoing consultation into the business case around that. If that business case says what we all think it will say, will the Minister recommit to that and work with his executive colleagues to bring that about?
Well, let me say several things to the member. I mean, first of all, we're not walking away from the capital bid in relation to McGee. It didn't meet the particular criteria around shared education in terms of the Treasury, in terms of this particular funding opportunity. It's still premature in terms of the formal business case approval and indeed planning permission for a bid to be made during this financial year for any capital funds. But I certainly do intend, subject to all the various approvals being in place, to make a bid at the earliest opportunity for the investment in the teaching block at McGee. We also have made significant interventions in terms of meeting the One Plan objectives, and we have 650 places delivered already in that regard. I have to say that whenever I assumed office, there was zero funding available for any expansion of university places anywhere in Northern Ireland, and through different means we have managed to secure the funding to allow us to expand those university places. But I also have to say to the member, as much as I have an aspiration and share his aspiration to see McGee further developed, For me, at this stage, to commit to additional places at the university would be folly, because in doing that, I have to baseline a commitment for at least 3 years. And in practice, once you actually announce these places, you can't simply just turn the tap off afterwards. Until we sort out the current impasse around welfare reform and budget uncertainty, we are in no position to be making any further announcements of expansion of the university, or indeed anything that requires a baseline commitment into the future. So we have to get past the current discussions we are having before any of these discussions can actually be advanced any further.
I call Raymond McCartney.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for a very detailed answer. Can I welcome the fact that he is committed to the expansion of Magee, in particular in relation to the point raised by Mr Eastwood. What plans have you got to go back to British Treasury to, if you like, to highlight the shared campus at Magee to ensure that we get the money for this teaching block?
Well, just on the specifics of the shared education bids, part of the issue was there was uncertainty around the criteria for those. We took the decision to go ahead and pitch for the Magee campus and to see what happened in that regard. I think one of the critical issues really is in terms of the added value that's going to come from the project, because as the member knows, both further education and higher education are already shared. So we needed to demonstrate how we were providing additional value, so we didn't get that one across the line. There may well be other opportunities from special capital programmes to bid again. Equally, there may well be another capital reallocation within the Executive due to underspends in other areas that we could take advantage of, and indeed we can actually bid for mainstream funding on a capital front as part of the next CSR period. I'm open to looking at all of those different options. There's no question in my mind that I am committed to moving ahead, subject to the approvals of the economic appraisal of the Magee teaching block capital investment. So at the earliest opportunity when we can do that, we will take advantage of whatever funds are available.
Moving on, I call George Robinson.
Question 6, Mr Deputy Speaker.
My department is committed to widening access and promoting educational opportunities for all individuals across Northern Ireland. Further education colleges offer a variety of courses throughout their main campuses and a network of approximately 500 community outreach centres. In 2012-13, there were 130,000 part-time enrolments on regulated qualifications in the sector and 33,000 part-time enrolments for recreational courses. These figures include people attending night classes. This is therefore a significant area of college activity. Further education curriculum policy has been developed to ensure that colleges achieve an appropriate balance between provision that strengthens economic and workforce development, enhances social cohesion and advances the individual's skills and learning. My department sets the strategic direction for further education sector, and individual colleges are responsible for designing a curriculum offer to meet the needs of learners and employers in their areas. This includes the delivery of night classes. Students who require financial assistance to meet the costs associated with learning and who are undertaking accredited courses leading to regulated qualifications at FE colleges, including night classes, can apply for help through further education awards and/or college hardship funds. The amount of support available from both these sources for eligible students is means tested based on household income and is dependent upon individual circumstances. Income-based concessionary fees are also available at each college. The Department has also supported the college's advertising and marketing working group to promote the full range of further education provision, including night classes, through their prospectuses, online promotions and links to NI Direct.
I call George Robinson.
Thank you. Could I ask the Minister, would the Minister agree that night classes can provide a cost-effective and valuable mechanism in gaining and updating qualifications which can enhance promotion and job security in high unemployment areas such as Limavady?
Yes, I agree with the member, and the comment applies to Limavady, it applies right across all of Northern Ireland. We do stress the importance of lifelong learning, We do stress the importance of people constantly investing in their skills. We live in a much more volatile economic situation and a much more changeable labour market, and it is likely that people will be changing their jobs more frequently than has been the case in the past. So we do want to encourage people to keep their skills as fresh as possible, and also to think about how they can progress in terms of their skills. So the role of the FE colleges is absolutely vital in that regard, whether we're talking about daytime activity or night classes.
I call Patsy McClone.
I heard earlier the Minister's response in regard to people taking night classes and what funding might be available to them. Could the Minister just advise if that funding applies to people? I'm not specifically referring to means-tested benefits because you already outlined that, but to others who may be in part-time work and who may be in receipt of the likes of working tax credits and other lower-income means of support.
Yeah, just want to be careful of giving an inaccurate answer to the member in this regard, and I think it's best that we judge each situation on the case that's put forward to us. So if the member has any particular cases in mind, I'm happy to look at those in greater detail and see if there is any eligible support available. But we need to look at the round of circumstances of an individual before we can give a definitive answer to any particular situation that arises.
And that is the end to listed questions, and we now move on to topical questions, and I call Mike Nesbitt.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. Could I ask the Minister for an update on the sale of the property in College Square East owned by Belfast Met?
I would love to be in a position to give the member a fuller answer today, but that transaction, while it is very well advanced, and while there may well be speculation in the media today, that transaction has yet to be formally concluded. And until that point occurs, the matter must remain commercial in confidence, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment any further on that. Suffice to say that once the transaction has been fully cleared, an announcement can be made.
I call Mike Nesbitt.
Well, I thank the Minister. I suspect we're into the area of technicalities. However, perhaps he could update the House on where the monies raised by the sale will be utilised.
Well, obviously this is a capital receipt, and it will be something to be reinvested back in the FE estate, and no doubt it has been already accounted for in terms of business cases that have gone through, in particular in relation to other redevelopments that have occurred in relation to the expansion of Belfast Metropolitan College.
I call Rosalie McCorley.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I ask the Minister, he made a statement this morning saying that mechanisms would be put in place to widen access to apprenticeships for people with disabilities. I'm Jiglat Lahnu Mak Ayanu or Shinladal. Could you expand on that, please?
Yes. Grateful for the member for the question. We are looking at issues around the expansion of participation in apprenticeships. That includes an overall figure of people who will take advantage of such opportunities. We also want to look at any particular barriers that exist, and we have raised issues about some of the gender imbalances that exist already, and also highlighted the point about people with disabilities. This will then be cross-referenced with work we're doing in terms of our Disability Employment Service. We are developing a disability employment strategy, which will be subject to public consultation in the autumn. And the issue about access to apprenticeships and indeed other training schemes will be one aspect of that strategy.
I call Rosalie McCorley.
I thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, can you outline what the timeline would be for when we can expect to see significant changes for people with disabilities in regards to their access to apprenticeships?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that today there shouldn't really be any barriers to people participating in apprenticeships if they have a disability. The point is that while people may have a range of disabilities, many of those are not work-limiting disabilities, and where people do have a disability that does restrict their ability to engage with work, we do have a number of existing schemes that will allow for adaptations to be made in that regard. Probably the main challenge we have is one of promotional work. first of all, to encourage people with disabilities to explore new options, and also to encourage employers to create opportunities and not to see disability as being a barrier. Obviously, people shouldn't be discriminated on the basis of disability anyway, but it's important that we address people's mindsets in this area and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to engage in employment. And it's important we bring the full range of talents to bear to make sure our economy grows to its maximum potential.
I call Sidney Anderson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, can I ask, in relation to those who have had the misfortune to be made redundant, to outline your department's strategic approach in helping with reskilling and retraining to assist them back into employment?
Well, again, grateful to the member for the question. First of all, we have the Department's redundancy service, which is available to help with people in terms of the immediate situation that they find themselves in. Indeed, that we offer clinics in that regard whenever we come across major redundancies. We work in partnership with a number of other agencies to provide a rounded set of services to deal with the different complexities that people will find themselves having to deal with. In terms of the issue then of retraining, we can offer a whole range of different programmes in that regard. Indeed, whenever we come across some major redundancies, we may take some very particular interventions to capture an entire cohort of people who require retraining and look to see if we can put in place some specific programmes in that regard. And that's something we did, for example, explore on the back of the redundancies that were announced in terms of FG Wilson back in the autumn of 2012. And I'm glad to say since then Caterpillar have been flourishing, and indeed they've expanded to new product lines, and that's again a success of the outreach work of the executive in terms of getting more inward investment. We also then have our general programmes that are available, and that includes things like apprenticeships, which can be an all-age intervention. They're not restricted to people between the ages of 18 and 24. We also have the Bridge to Employment scheme, which is there to work with employers who wish to avail of opportunities to work with people who are unemployed. And indeed, there is the mainstream Steps to Work programme, which is shortly being replaced by Steps to Success, which is there to help people who are long-term unemployed.
I call Sidney Anderson.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for that response. And Minister, you have touched on the all-age aspect, but I'm sure you will accept that those who are aged 40 and over and who have been made redundant, they can find it indeed more difficult to find employment. But can you tell us what specific action you're actually taking to help with those in that age bracket?
Well, again, I think the member is right to highlight that there is a particular problem with older workers in terms of re-engagement with the labour market. And we, in terms of our profile of unemployment, we do have particular pressure points at either part of the age spectrum. First of all, young people and also older workers. Again, the Steps to Success programme will be all age, and within that, the new contractors will be encouraged to be flexible in terms of the approach that they make, and doing that to tailor responses to suit the needs of workers. So those people who have maybe less qualifications because they went through school and training at a different period in time may expect to see different types of interventions than perhaps younger workers who have maybe the qualifications but in turn who maybe lack the experience. So we can see a differentiation in that regard. I would also highlight the Step Ahead 50+ initiative where we provided placements for older workers in the community and voluntary sector, and that has proved to be very successful and very popular.
I call Kieran McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And along the same lines as Mr Anderson, can the Minister, well, he would be aware that Northern Ireland has always had a high, unfortunately high unemployment figures. Could the Minister tell us what his comments is on the latest unemployment figures released recently?
Again, I mean, the issue of unemployment is something that's highly relevant to us all, and it is an ongoing matter of concern. We are pleased, however, that we are seeing a sustained fall in unemployment. And indeed, the current claimant count stands at 55,500, 6.3% of the workforce. That's down 500 from the previous month. We've now seen the claimant count decreasing for 17 consistent months. That's the most sustained fall in unemployment since June 1995. and in terms of the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate, we're now at 6.9%, and again, that's a decrease in terms of the previous figure. That said, we do appreciate that we are moving from what has been a very high figure in terms of unemployment, so there's a lot of work still to be done to bring those figures down even further. And within that, we do have some particular problems around youth unemployment and also long-term unemployment, and there are specific interventions that we have to address both of those aspects.
I call Kieran McCarthy for
the Minister for his answer and for the positive response he's given. But could he suggest maybe that there would be some cross cooperation between his department and the Department of Education, given the announcement that was made this morning in relation to new build? Will there be opportunities jointly performed by the two departments to see that see any opportunities that there would be to get our employment figures further down?
Well, obviously, we are very keen to promote social clauses across government. They are now mainstreamed, and indeed departments have the option of going further in that regard. And I have no doubt that the Minister of Education will be very committed to ensuring that social clauses are deployed to the maximum in terms of the programmes that he's taken forward. And indeed, all of my ministerial colleagues I do believe share the same outlook in that regard. There's a lot that we can do to address unemployment. We have the more immediate interventions to address those people who find themselves in unemployment through, for example, the Youth Employment Scheme for young people, Steps to Success, and some of the other interventions that we have. But we also have to look at some of the structural issues that we have to address within our economy to make sure that we try to remove unemployment at source. And that involves things such as better career advice, which is why we're doing the review of careers. It also means the promotion of vocational training, including apprenticeships. And I have made reference to the fact that many other countries across Europe that have stronger footprints in terms of vocational training have much lower levels of unemployment, including youth unemployment. There's a clear lesson for us in that regard, and that's why we're putting such a focus upon the importance of vocational training as a means of not only supplying the right skills for our economy, but also reducing unemployment.
I call Alden McGuinness.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. One of the most intractable problems in our economy is economic inactivity, and seems to be stubbornly ingrained within our society. An expert group has been set up as part of the Economic Inactivity Framework. Could I ask the Minister to outline the progress that has been made in relation to this?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I concur with the member. This is a deep structural problem within our economy. It's been with us for at least 30 years and has survived the ups and downs of the economic cycle, so it does point to the fact that it is a deeply embedded problem. The member will know we launched a joint consultation. It was devised by my department in conjunction with the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment on behalf of the Executive, and that also involves support from a number of other government departments. That consultation has closed, and we have published a summary of responses to that consultation. A paper is set to be brought to the Economic Subcommittee of the Executive next week, discussing the way forward in that regard, and shortly thereafter the departments involved will bring a report to the Executive with a view to finalising a strategy. And in many respects then the hard work begins of trying to tackle this issue, which is deeply embedded, and we are looking to a series of pilot programmes and proposals coming forward, including from the community and voluntary sector, about innovative means that we can experiment with to see how we can address this issue, particularly in relation to those people who are long-term sick or disabled, and also those with family commitments who have been excluded from the labour market as a consequence of those.
I call it Alden McGuinness.
Could I thank the Minister for his answer and welcome the work that's being done in relation to economic inactivity in that particular segment. But a subset of that are people who suffer from disability. Is there any one person, any expert represented in the group that might advise the group in terms of dealing with the problems that beset people who suffer from disability?
Well, the work has been advanced by officials from my department and the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Investment, and indeed officials from other departments. However, we have a wide-ranging engagement with key stakeholders. For example, Minister Foster, Minister McCausland and myself met with a range of businesses and other organisations last Tuesday to discuss aspects of the emerging strategy, and indeed there were people there from disability organisations at the table. We've also had a number of stakeholder engagement events, and again they heavily featured organisations that work in the disability sector. We have a commitment to ongoing engagement with all of those stakeholders, including the disability sector, so I have confidence that those voices will very much be at the table and influential in shaping future policy.
I call Joanne Dobson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister update the House on steps which are being taken to increase retention rates amongst students undertaking further and higher education courses?
Well, I am pleased to say to the member that we are seeing improvements in terms of both attainment and retention levels across the further education sector. It is something that the colleges themselves are driving, but under the strategic direction from the department. And indeed, as we look to the development of a revised further education strategy later this year, those issues around retention and attainment will be core features of that discussion.
I call Joanne Dobson.
Can I thank the Minister for his answer? I was privileged to support pupils recently at Banbridge campus of the Southern Regional College who, as part of their public service course, undertook a charity skydive. Now, I'm not asking the Minister to undertake a charity skydive, but...
Go on.
Well, maybe you should. Can I ask what plans does the Minister have to look at best practice examples like this and roll it out across the other sectors?
Well, first of all, before I undertake any skydive, I would want a firm assurance that I would be provided with a parachute. Who knows? But in terms of the issue of best practice, yes, we're very keen to ensure that best practice is applied across the colleges. We have Colleges NI, which is the umbrella organisation for the sector, and in many ways they're the best placed people to spread the news of successful interventions. By the same token, I don't want all 6 colleges being exact mirror images of each other. We do want them to experiment, to innovate, and to have their own specialisms on behalf of the economy as a whole. So it's appropriate that we find the right balance in that regard, but I have no doubt that they will be keen to hear the lessons of what's happened in Banbridge.
And that is the end to questions to the Minister for Employment and Learning.